Welcome to this week's edition of Windows Business Weekly. Today we're going to talk about servicing changes that Microsoft has made to Windows 10, how Linux has surpassed Windows Server in the Azure cloud, and how you can use Cortana to create tasks and reminders. All that is coming up. So first, Microsoft has again made changes to the way that it's going to service Windows 10. So as you know, Microsoft makes 2 feature updates for Windows 10 every year. This year we've already had the first feature update, which is called the May 2019 update. And these feature updates require a full reinstall of the operating system. So as you probably already know, that's quite a time-consuming procedure. Now, because it's a full install of the OS, we actually need to do a lot of testing with that, and it takes a lot of time out for the user, because obviously they have to sit and wait for it to install and then wait for that reboot to happen. And of course that can easily take 1 hour while the machine is down and rebooting. So it's a huge inconvenience for IT and users alike. Now, there should be a second update, a feature update coming to Windows 10 this year, but up until this week we hadn't actually heard anything about it. So I had wondered whether they would just provide the 19H2 update, which will come in September or October, as something more like a service pack or something like the monthly quality updates that we get every month to provide security and performance fixes. Now, Microsoft announced this week that is indeed what is going to happen. So while we don't know what's actually going to be in the 19H2 update, Microsoft has released a version of the update to the insiders, and that's on the slow ring at the moment. There are no new features in the build, it's just purely to test the delivery through Windows updates. Now, it's quite interesting what's happening over there with the Windows insiders, because the 20H1 preview build was released, I think, back in late February or March to insiders. So that's more than a whole year before it's actually going to see a general release for everybody else. Now, Microsoft has said that we need a lot of time to test some of the features that are going to be in that build. I'm also wondering whether this is going to be just the new normal, that there will be a much longer lead time on testing one major feature update every year, which we'll get in spring, then something more like a service pack to that feature update that will come in September, October of that same year. So the 20H1 build is due to come in spring 2020. The 19H2 build is due to come in autumn of this year, 2019. And it's going to be delivered something akin to the quality updates that we get every month, or sometimes more than once a month. Now, the thing about the quality updates is that it's not a full reinstall of the operating system. You do have to reboot the machine, but it's all much faster, much less of an inconvenience. And because it's not a full reinstall, that hopefully means it's also going to mean less testing for IT as well. So it's more convenient for the IT department and for users, and I hope this is what Microsoft is going to do going forwards. Although they have actually refused to confirm that this is going to be the new normal. At the moment they're just saying this is something that we're trying just for this year, but who knows, this might be something that they carry on with. Nobody really likes the 2 full feature updates every year. It's just too much for IT, it annoys users, and I think this is a good plan going forwards. So we'll see what happens. And if you didn't already know, of course, it's the autumn update that enterprises tend to stick with. Because if you're running either the enterprise or education SKU of Windows 10, then you can get support for that build for up to 30 months. So that is the one that most enterprises, of course, want to use and stick with. So what else is going on? Kind of accidentally this week, a developer wrote on a application to subscribe to a Linux security board, I think it was, that actually Linux is now more deployed on virtual machines in the Azure cloud than Windows Server. Now, if I think back to, I think it was October 2017, it was revealed that Linux was running on about 40% of all Azure VMs. Then if you roll forward 1 year to 2018, that went up to about 50%, so it was about 50-50. And now in 2019, we know already that Linux has overtaken Windows Server. Is it surprising news? Not really. Does it mean that Windows Server is in decline? It depends how you look at it. I think it's fair to say that Windows Server is not really in favor in terms of DevOps. So, if we talk about DevOps environments, so this is the kind of application system, if you like, that combines developers and system administrators into one team so that they can push out new applications much faster than was previously possible. Now, because Linux is very flexible, it's very lightweight, it has a small footprint, it's ideally suited to these kind of fast-moving DevOps environments. And Windows Server wasn't really designed to fit into that world. Okay, we do have virtualization, we do have containerization, but Windows Server just isn't that flexible, and it doesn't really suit the whole DevOps paradigm, if you like. But we can also look at it in a slightly different way. If you think that the number of servers has massively increased in the last 10 years since virtualization has really taken off, and the density at which applications can now be installed on a particular device because of containerization has really increased the deployments of servers in all sorts of different environments. So it's not so much that Windows Server itself has decreased in use, but Linux has just boomed in use. So you've also got to think that the Azure cloud runs on Windows Server. The whole of Office 365 runs on Windows Server. So a lot of the on-premise Windows servers that you might have had in the past are now somewhere in the cloud. And we can't necessarily see them there because we just access the services that are exposed to us. But all of that is run on Windows Server. Now, about Azure, it doesn't 100% run on Windows Server. Linux is there and it helps things along when it's needed. But the majority of it, the large bulk of it, does actually run on Windows Server. And that also means that Azure Stack runs on Windows Server. So Azure Stack is the kind of Azure in a box that you can buy and you can put in your server room so that you've got your own private cloud. So yes, Linux is everywhere. You could argue that it's taken over, but Windows Server is still very much in use in organizations that are Windows shops, which is most large enterprises. And it provides all those valuable infrastructure services like Active Directory, Exchange, SharePoint, File and Print. And Windows Server is still the best way to provide those services for Windows, of course. And I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to Microsoft at this stage. Are you using Windows Server or are you using Linux? Because they're trying to push you to the cloud or to the hybrid cloud. And one way or the other, regardless of whether you choose Windows or Linux, they're going to gain an income stream from you anyway, from your business. Doesn't really matter, is it Windows, Linux? As long as you're connecting to their cloud, using their services, what does it really matter to Microsoft at this stage? So I don't think Windows Server is in decline as such. It's just that the whole overall picture has changed, and you can see that Linux and the number of applications that we now use and the quantity of those application instances has just boomed to basically reshift the whole landscape. And of course, Windows Server is just taking a back seat. And finally today, I want to talk a little bit about Cortana. Now, Cortana is a little bit of a strange thing because people tend to either disable it or just ignore it. But it can do a couple of useful things, which I do pretty much every day with it. And I want to talk about using Cortana to create reminders and to create tasks in your to-do list. Now, when Cortana was first released, its reminders and its tasks were just part of Cortana. So if you created a reminder, it would be in Cortana only. If you created a list, it would be in Cortana only. And you would receive reminder notifications from Cortana. Now, I think it was already sometime last year where Microsoft added the ability to synchronize Cortana lists with the To-Do application. Now, of course, the To-Do application is really just a front end for the task lists in Outlook, in case you weren't aware of that. But this integration is really great. So there are two things that you can do with Cortana. You can just create a reminder, which is in Cortana, and you can say, for instance, remind me to record Windows Business Weekly, WBW, at 9 a.m. next Tuesday. And Cortana will remind you to do that. So you don't have to even click through an interface, although you can open Cortana and click through to actually create a reminder. You can even just type, so remind me to do this at this time, or you can even speak. You can just say what it is that you want Cortana to do. So it depends on what your personal preference is. What else can you do? You can create lists, or you can add to existing lists. So for instance, you could say, please add record Windows Business Weekly to my to-do list. And Cortana will then add that to your to-do list, and you can see that in Cortana, and you can see it in the to-do application because it's synchronized, as long as you sign into Cortana with your Office 365 account or a Microsoft account. And it will also, of course, if you're using Office 365, you'll also be able to see that in Outlook, or if you're using a Microsoft account, outlook.com. So I'm going to show you how that works in case you weren't aware. And it just saves you having to open up another application to do something. So I'm going to switch over to my virtual PC here. So just give me a second. So let's open Cortana and see if we can create a reminder. Remind me to record WBW next Tuesday at 9 a.m.
Okay, great.
And you can see there I won't get a reminder because I have Cortana notifications disabled on this PC. But if I did, I would get a reminder about recording Windows Business Weekly next Tuesday, which is the 9th of July at 9 a.m. So that's pretty cool. So you can even type that into the search box. You don't need to say it. Or you can click through the Cortana interface and create a reminder, as I said before. But I think it's really cool that you can just open Cortana either using the button on the taskbar or by pressing the Windows key and C. And it will open up Cortana and she will start listening to your every command. In a similar way, you can add tasks to a to-do list. So let's try that. Add a WBW to my to-do list.
Okay. I'll add that to your to-do list.
And there you can see now that I have WBW at the top of my to-do items in the to-do list. And you can actually add to any list that you have in to-do. And as long as you've added an account to Cortana, all of that information will be synchronized with to-do and, of course, Outlook. So that is also really cool. So Cortana isn't completely useless. It does have some useful things in there. And for me, this is the only thing I ever really do with Cortana. I wish it were a bit more useful than it is. But I think this is a really cool thing that most people could integrate into their daily workflow. So that's it for this week's Windows Business Weekly. I hope that was useful, and I'll see you next week.